one of the things I've been doing for the last couple of years, my wife Kathy prompted me to do this. About 2 years ago, she said, "How many songs have you actually written?" I said, "I do not know. If it's not in the thousands, it's in the high hundreds." She's like, "Right. And apart from the 60 or 70 that are on your actual albums, what are you doing with them?" "I don't know. They're just kind of sitting around on hard drives." And right, "Okay, screw that. We're putting them all up on your Bandcamp site." Right? Bandcamp, think of it as Spotify for people who don't mind making money. And so what I've been doing is rounding up everything I've ever done and putting them up in like themed albums on the Bandcamp. And this has also involved revisiting stuff that I wrote before I had any decent home recording equipment. So I spent a lot of the last couple of years re-recording all my oldest material, like Taylor Swift. The only time my career's ever going to overlap with hers. And at the last count, there were, I think, 135 albums.
Wow.
On my Bandcamp site. There's a bit of overlap. Some tracks turn up on more than one, but then some of them are only like EPs, like 5-6 tracks. But I'm trying to get everything I ever wrote up on the Bandcamp site. So, have a look at mitchbenn.bandcamp.com. Some of it's downloadable, some of it's free,
And you're doing a podcast where you call this result that was listening to today.
I've nicked somebody else's catchphrase for it. It's called "We Know a Song About That, Don't We?" Which is actually an old Hell and Pace catchphrase. Because I've been writing topical, satirical songs for like 30 years. It's very rare that something happens in the news that I haven't already written a song about, or at least very nearly about. So the podcast is, we talk about what's happening in the news this week, and then I play you the song I wrote the last time it happened. It's just a way of getting a bit more mileage out the back catalogue. Really.
But the one I just listened to, which I think is the most recent one, as we talk, you sing a song about right-wing politics and marches and stuff, which is, it's about the BNP, but it could be about that.
Yeah, at the time I think it was about the BNP.
Yeah.
Before they disbanded it because the membership couldn't spell it. One does one's best not to despair, but at the end of the day, you've got to remember that fascism is a philosophy designed to appeal to weaklings and idiots, and that's why it always fails eventually. That's why it wins in the short term, is because it's just too bloody easy. Rule 1, nothing wrong with your life is your fault. It's all the fault of insert hate group as applicable. Okay. Rule 2, once we've eradicated hate group as applicable, you will be David Beckham. You will be handsome and rich and beautiful and everyone will love you. Rule 3, you don't actually have to do anything to bring this about except completely abandon your moral compass and do everything you're told. It's a philosophy for fools and weaklings, and I'm sorry, however many utter cynics there are at the top of that tree manipulating the fools and weaklings, you can't. And also, this is why political philosophies make the mistake. They make the mistake that religion doesn't. Religion makes sure to promise all its rewards in the next life, right? As Shakespeare almost called it, that undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveller comes looking for his money back. Whereas political philosophies, if you put it this way, if you've declared that you're the master race, you better be the bloody master race, because you're going to butt heads with some other people, and if you lose, you're going to look a bit stupid. Or if you've said you've created the workers' paradise, it better be the workers' paradise, because if not, the workers are only going to take so much of it, and this is the trouble. But no, we do live in some pretty grim political times at the moment. We really do. But I am, I refuse to despair because I see glimmers of light. I mean, the thing which is really winding me up about Farage is this narrative of bullshit inevitability that the press are trying to generate around him. And that was why it was so important that they lost that bloody by-election in. I keep saying Galton and Simpson, but it's not. What was it? But it's the fact that the Greens, that Greens lady plumber who looks for all the world like a 1970s play school presenter. It was so important that she won because that really fractured that inevitability narrative. Because essentially, without wanting to sound too tinfoil-hatted about it, the billionaires who own most of our media and exert an awful lot of influence on the rest of it have decided collectively that the two major parties have, to one degree or another, shat the bed and that something else is coming. And there are only really two possibilities. It's either the Greens or reform. And of those, the Greens might make them pay some tax, so it's reform, right? And so this, that's what's been going on. Thanks for the applause, but I seriously doubt I'm the first person to come up with this. And so that's why you've had this bullshit inevitability narrative being built up around Farage. He is your new leader. Resistance is futile. You can't change the past even if it hasn't happened yet. You know, and that's why it was so important that he lost that by-election. And you know, I don't give a shit whether Andy Burnham wins or not, as long as the twat they've got in loses for the next one. But yeah, it's.
Well, we'll see. I think what needs to happen and what will protect us against it all is if proportional representation comes in, which I don't know if they can do it before the next election. But it also, whatever side you're on, it's fair. It's not fair that Reform get 25% of the votes and 6 MPs. That's not fair. If you're going to, you know, so but equally, if it's proportional representation, 25% of the vote, the seats is not enough.
It's not enough to do anything with, exactly. And the trouble is, it also suppresses the minor votes on the progressive side, and it fragments the progressive vote in a way that would be not entirely repaired. But what it would mean is that you would end up with a sort of a progressive coalition that could conceivably form a majority. Whereas, as it is, you know, I mean, that's the trouble with first past the post is that. And this is what I was always trying to explain during the Corbyn period. People are talking about, you know, he's just got a higher percentage of support than Tony Blair did. Yeah, but it's all concentrated around the heartlands. It doesn't actually make any difference how many people. It's where they all are. I mean, this is the insanity of first past the post is you can get 40% of the vote and win every seat in the House. And you can get 40% of the vote and win nothing. Those are both mathematically possible, you know, and that's the trouble. So it's all about vote distribution. And then what happens, of course, is you end up in weird, like, for example, I live in a Tory Lib Dem marginal, right? So the only thing which happens if you vote Labour, is you get Zach Goldsmith back for 2 years. That's the only thing which happens, you know. And so bizarrely, the one thing which you can't do in our constituency, if you don't want the Tories to win, is vote Labour. Because that's how the Tories get in our constituency, when they take just enough off the Lib Dems to let the Tories bring in. So you end up having to do these bizarre calculations. I mean, the one thing I wouldn't mind about one thing I would like about proportional representation is it would get rid of one of my least favourite expressions in the political discourse, which is voting with your conscience. And people talk about tactical voting, and they create sort of voting with your conscience as the antithesis of this, as if somehow, you know, voting tactically is an exercise in pure grubby cynicism. And it's like, wait a minute, what do you mean conscience? What is it that your conscience regards as important? Is it the fact that your credentials are unstained, or is it the outcome? Is it what actually happens to the people? Because if you are going to cast your vote in such a way that you know is going to help the bad guys win, where's your conscience in that fucking equation? You know? Whereas I just really resent that particular expression, voting with your conscience. It's not vote with your conscience, it's vote with your fucking ego. That's what it is. Behold my unsullied socialist credentials. You've just let the Tories back in. Ah, yes, but my unsullied socialist credentials are what matter to me. You know, and it's, you know, but anyway. It's easy for me to do because I've never had any tribal affiliate. I don't really do tribal affiliations. This is probably another, you know, neurodivergent thing. You know,
but also, as I think, as you say, as a satirist, and if you remember last week's show,
just about. Casting my mind back.
Somebody who's, you know, as a comedian, I think you should be able to step outside of everything. Not for everyone, because there are some good political comedians who nail the colours of the mask. But I think really you're sort of standing back going, this is ridiculous about this. This is ridiculous about this.
Exactly.
And it's not, and you shouldn't really have an affiliation.
Yeah, but then the trouble is you end up with the fallacy of the false middle. The idea that sort of, you know, the way to be fair and sort of, or the way to be objective is to be equally crappy about both sides. That's not objectivity. That's just sort of like, that's sort of, you know, the false middle. There are some arguments where one side's right and the other side's wrong. And the objective assessment of that is these guys are right and these guys are wrong. Not, you know, there's a joke somebody used to make about CNN, was if CNN were interviewing two guys, one of them said 2 and 2 was 4, and another one said 2 and 2 was 5, then CNN would conclude that 2 and 2 was 4.5.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, no, being objective is not about giving equal, you know, credit to both sides or being equally condemnatory of both sides. Being objective is actually being realistic about what the various sides are actually doing. And, you know, if the left are sort of, you know, flailing around in their usual, you know, pudding of benevolent uselessness, but whereas the right are literally burning down the world, then the objective assessment is say, you may have noticed that the right wing are currently burning down the world. That's not me being, you're being horribly biased. No, that's just an objective assessment. One side are literally burning down the world, and the other side are, People's Front of Judea-ing it as usual,
But that's still, you're still within that.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're standing outside it and looking. It doesn't mean you have to say everyone's got a point. It's the opposite of that. It's finding what's ridiculous and what's wrong.
Well, everyone's got a point, but some people's points are wrong.
Yeah, well, sometimes it is wrong, and sometimes if a comedian is punching down at a group of the society and think they're being edgy as a result of that, it's worth standing up. It's worth standing up against that. But anyway.
Yes.